There's no point in having more wire than you need. So to cut that into 4, like that. Keep hold of the wires both sides, then they don't fly away, because sometimes when you cut them you can end up having to hunt for the wires. And whatever you do, don't bend your wires. I keep catching students bending the wires. If you do that, particularly when you're doing something where you've got to put it in unless I tell you to, you want the wires straight, especially when you're doing leaves and petals and things like that. Right, the next stage is I'm going to put some stamens on, and I've got some ready-made stamens here, and I'm going to take, I think I've spilled something on these, they're a bit stuck together. I've got some more out there. I'm going to take 2 of these stamens. Now for some of the flowers that I do, people that know me know that I have a tendency to make the wires if I can. I just have to undo this a bit to get my wires out, to loosen them up. I obviously spilt some glue or something on there for them to stick together like that. There we are. Two wires. Make sure you keep them all together in a bunch, because if you let go they'll go all over the place. So the wire that comes round them like this, just wind it round and make sure that they stay in a bunch like that. So we've got 2 wires here, 2 stamens rather, and they're all double-ended are all these stamens. So you've got a white cotton with a little blob on the end. I don't know whether you can see that or not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fold those 2 in half. You wouldn't normally find 4 stamens in a flower, but we're not doing a particular type of flower. We're not aiming to be botanically correct here, so I'm only going to use a little bit. Now I've got some florist tape here. This is called stem text, which is a bit like crepe paper with glue in it. And when I've cut this into half, I have my little handy gadget here, which is an optional gadget with razor blades in that I use for cutting it, rather than going all the way down a piece of wire with a pair of scissors. So what you do first of all is stretch the end of the tape, and that'll release the glue. So if you just put it on your fingers like that and find out which is the sticky side. Now then, there's 2 ways you can do this. You can either start the tape off on your wire, or you can start it off on your stamens. Don't put your stamens on and your wire together and try to start it off, because you'll have difficulty starting it. So we get it in. Now you nip it in with your nail just to make sure that that's stuck down, and then just roll it between your finger and your thumb like that. Get your wire, pop that in so the top of the wire is just below the edge of that tape, so it's not going to show. Not that it makes a lot of difference, because that's going to go down inside the flower anyway. And then tape all the way down your wire. I'm using a light green tape here, which is called Nile green. It does come in various different colours. The most common colours that we use are moss, Nile green and brown, depending on what you're making. There is a white tape which we use sometimes if you're going to colour it, like a poinsettia where you've got the red stems and things like that. So you've got your stamens there. I'm just going to pop that in my foam for the time being. I'm just going to get some kitchen roll. It's another bit of kit that you need, that we use a lot. Wipe my board off, and I'm going to go back to the paste now, because I'm doing basically cream roses with pink edges. I've got some very pale cream paste here, which is possibly the colour that you've used for the outer part of your roses. If you're doing this colour combination, would be a good idea. Or you could just do plain white ones to put in with whatever colour you're doing, your choice. Right, so we start off with a small ball of paste, and apparently if you roll your paste anti-clockwise on your palm, you don't get any cracks in it. Now we're going to make a cone the same as we did for the roses, only this time we're going to have it the other way up, with the point down and the other side up. Now I have a little tool here that you can use to mark your centres out. If you haven't got it, then something like a cell stick, which is a tiny little rolling pin, or even a cocktail stick or anything like that will do. But this one has two ends. It's got a 6 end and a 5 end of points on it. I've used the 5 point, and the reason for that is because that gives you a guide for when you come to cut with your scissors. Now I always stayed clear of pulled flowers when I was learning, because I could never do it. We didn't have tools like this then. These came along later. You need a pair of nail scissors. These are special Sugarcraft scissors that are very expensive, but an ordinary pair of nail scissors like these, they'll do. This one's got a curved edge on it, so they're quite handy for some things as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip in where those lines are. Clip. Don't go right down to the bottom. You only want to go sort of near to it. Okay, and open it out like that. Then back to your pad. Pop that down on your pad. Now, when we were taught how to do pull flowers, what you had to do was to get it on your thumb like that and stretch it out with your thumb. And I could never get the petals all the same size, but then I saw somebody demonstrating at the Cake International, and she showed us how to do it this way with a ball point. So what you do, ball tool. So basically, lay it down with the petal that you want to stretch flat on the board, in with your ball tool and pull it out like that. Roll it over to the next one, pull it out like that. Pull it out, pull it out, and last petal. Okay, so then you've got 5 petals on there. So the next thing to do is I like to give them a little bit of veining, so this is where this tool comes in handy. So lay it in the centre and just roll it from side to side. This also thins the edge of your petals as well when you're doing this. Just to use the bone of your finger to rest on, and use that for your pad, and roll your petals out like that, like that, like that, right to the very edge of your petals. Okay, and then what I do is, to get a bit of shape, then I get the edge of the petals and just give them a little pinch like this. Like that. Get your wire with your stamens on it down into the centre of the flower, and you want that to come right the way down out of the bottom of the flower like that. Okay, pull that down until the green disappears into your flower. Then between your 2 forefingers, roll it between your 2 forefingers to roll it down your wire like that. And then just pull your petals up. Then you can go around, and if you need to give them a little bit of a twinge like that. Okay. And then put that way one side to dry. Right, now when I've done that, then I'm going to show you how to make the leaves. Now when you're starting out, the easiest way to do it is to do it on the cell board. So I'm going to turn that over now onto this side. Get a bit of white fat on my hands and rub it over these veins here. Now I've already got some green paste made up somewhere over here. When you're buying colours to do your flowers and your leaves, don't go to a lot of expense buying loads of different greens and things like that. Other colours, yes, but greens, there's only one green that I would ever use, and that is either Holly and Ivy from Squire's Kitchen or Xmas Green from Sugar Flare, which is an extra strength paste, which is a bit more expensive, and because of one of the products that are in it to colour it. but basically they're the same colour. It's like the ivory. The ivory is the same in the Wilton as it is in the sugar flare. So I'm going to break off a small piece of green paste. And I'm going to roll that into a sausage now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to aim to cut 2 leaves out. So I want that a little bit longer. Put that over 2 of the ridges. Now you might find it easier to do one at a time. If it means doing one at a time, do one at a time, because the paste dries out very quickly, so don't try to do too much. And then start rolling it out over those grooves. Now you don't want to go as thin as you are with the petals, because leaves are a bit fleshier than petals, so we can get away with them being a bit thinner. Take your paste off and turn it over, and you've got your 2 grooves there. So then you've got your leaves here. I'm just going to do 2 sizes, one of each of 2 sizes, because I've already got some leaves already made and dried, ready to colour them, so we don't take too much time watching me making boring leaves. So over your groove, with your groove up the centre, or should I say your ridge up the centre, cut the petal out. Same with that. I'm doing the bigger one and the medium one because they're bigger and you'll be able to see them easier. Now what you've got to be careful of here is, because you've got these little spikes on the leaves, that when you pull the paste away, you make sure you go the way that the spikes are going. So start from the bottom, put your finger on the bottom and pull your paste away to the top, like that. Same with the other one. Because if you pull it the other way, you'll pull your spikes down and it'll go misshapen, so that's no good. We don't want that. Just put that away for a minute. We shall be coming back to the green in a bit, because I'll show you how to make the calyx for the back of the flower. So once you've done that, then you want some 28 gauge wires, which I've already got a couple of wires cut here. And what we need to do is to get that wire as far up the petal as we can. So put it on your first finger with your thumb on top, into the bottom. Make sure your wire's straight before you put it in. That's got a little bit of a bend on the end, so we won't use that end. Twist it in, because they're covered in stem text of these, and if you don't twist it in, sometimes it can unravel and it can tear your paste. And then a little bit at a time, you can feel it going down your paste in your ridge, and make sure it doesn't show on that side. If it does, just pull it back. I'll do it wrong on the other one to show you what happens if you come out. So if you get that leaf on there on your first finger, thumb on top, twist into the bottom. Now I've come out a bit there, so pull your wire back and go back in and back up your leaf. That's gone up to about there, so that's gone all the way up and it's not showing. Next thing to do, back to your pad. We always thin the edges just to take that cut edge off. If you do competition work, which I've done in the past, they look for things like that. They're more bothered about your edges being thin than the centre of your petals and leaves, although sometimes I think some of the competition entries are a bit thick, but that's my opinion. So this time go the way that the spikes are going when you're thinning your petals. So go from the bottom to the top, bottom to top, bottom to top. Now this is where you do need a veiner for doing this, because the next bit, to make it look like a rose leaf, we have these veiners here. These are actually made from real rose leaves. So what you need to do now is get it the right way up, so the bottom of your leaf is towards the bottom of your veiner. The ridge there wants to go in the groove, because that's going to be the back of the leaf, and the raised part here, which it would look like the back of a leaf, it isn't. It's going to form the front. These are the opposite way around, so it's a mirror effect. On top, press, bring it out and shape the leaf like that. on top, just where you get the best leaf veining, sort of near to the top. This one doesn't have very good veining at the top, so I've put them slightly further down. Shape it. And then what you need to do with that then is we use this foam here, bobble foam. This is actually acoustic foam, is this. If we buy it from a sugarcraft shop, we can get it, we pay a lot of money for it. I get it from an acoustic firm and it's cheaper. I sell these for a square for £2, whereas at shows you get a tiny bit for £2.50. That goes in between there like that, so that shapes your petals. The reason we use this foam is because with it being foam, it lets the air through, so it dries your petals from front and back both at the same time. So that's what we do with that. Right, so that's your leaves. I've already got some ready done here, and for each sprig of leaves, this is a sprig of leaves here, you want 2 small, 2 medium and 1 large. And then I'll show you how to colour them like that when we get on to the next stage. So they're already dry, ready to colour. So the next stage now is to do the calyx for the back of the rose. So if I show you, I'll turn my board back over again, I'm going back onto the flat side, so we don't need the ridges anymore. A little bit of fat. And the calyx is the back part of the rose, this part here. So that's the part that's the outer part of the flower before it opens, and then it curves back. On a natural rose they do actually curl back, but if we do that in sugar they break off too easily when we try and put them into sprays, so we don't do that. I'm just going to pop that over there. Right, so onto your board, roll your paste out. Again, you don't want to go as thin as we do with the petals because the calyx part of it is more fleshy like the leaves are, so we don't go quite as thin. It doesn't want to be too thick. You can tell your paste is too thick if when you thin round the edge you end up with a big deep groove round the edge of your paste, and that's because you haven't rolled it thin enough. So, but we don't want these to be frilly like a petal anyway, so we're not going to put as much pressure on. We just want to clean the edges off. So for that we're going to use a calyx cutter, which is, what have I done with it? Lost my calyx cutter. There it is. Now these do come in plastic or metal. I don't mind people using the plastic ones because they're less expensive, but some people do prefer the metal ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the calyx on a full rose, half rose, and a bud. Not on that one, yeah. So I'm going to cut out 3 of these calyx. Now you can go to the trouble of cutting little nicks into your calyx if you want to be botanically correct. Some people like to do it, some people don't. But if you look at a rose, probably 2 or 3 of the points on here have little nicks in them. But it depends on how pedantic you want to be. You know, I mean, if I was doing a life-size rose then I would go to that trouble. I have actually got some special calyx cutters that do that for me. And when I've done competition work I've gone to that trouble as well, but that's for competition work. You're aiming for a prize and they're very picky about every little detail, so you have to be careful there. So again, onto your pad. Where's my ball tool gone? What have we done with it? Oh, there it is. I keep losing things because I move them out of the way. Should make a note to myself, shouldn't I? Right. So this time I'm going to go from the centre outwards, because it may stretch your calyx slightly, but that's okay. I quite like the calyx to be quite long. On some people do them a lot shorter than me, but that's down to personal preference. If you did want to be botanically correct when you're doing the calyx in a spray of flowers, when I was taught how to do it, Maureen told me to, if you're going to put the calyx on, you want to curl them back, don't put your calyx on until just before you start assembling your flowers, and then they're still quite soft when you put them in, so you can adjust them then, and they're less likely to break off because they're soft. So if they move about, you can readjust them. Right, so once you've done that, turn it over again, like that. And what I'm going to do now is, I'm going to get the ball tool in the centre of each of the calyx and pull down like that and cup it in. This starts them going the way that I want them to go. And in some cases makes them fit a bit better to your flower if you do this. You don't have to do it, but it does help. And if you wanted to be really picky, you could also ball tool in the centre there, because that's going to go around the bottom of your flower. Now the thing to remember, if people notice, they always say to me, well, that bottom piece is all showing, it looks untidy. That's going to be covered by your calyx when you put that on, so don't worry about that, that's fine. Try not to get glue on your pad if you can avoid it, because otherwise when you're thinning edges or something, I mean it will dry, it'll be alright when it's dried off there, but if you do get any on, be careful if you've got some more to cut out. Right, I'm going to start with the bud first of all, so we'll come back to a bud, into the centre of your calyx like that, pull that up, turn it upside down, your sepals will drop down where they want to go, and then just ease them down into place. Sometimes they overlap, sometimes they don't, it just depends. I don't want to go too flush up against the side, because I want them to stand off a little bit, because it is opening up, but that's covered all the bottom part there. We'll come back to that in a bit, because we've another stage to do on that. So we'll come on to the half rows. Just try and make sure that your sepals fall where you're going to cover up that base bit, but if you've made your centres small enough, this should cover it all up. Okay, and then onto the full rows. Now on the full rows, because you've got 5 petals and you've got 5 sepals, try and get your sepals to fall over the joint of your petals. So if you pull it up and you see there you've got your edge of your petal, bring your first sepal up over that and then take them round like that over the joins like that. Okay, adjust that into position. Right, the next stage now is we want to make the hip, which is the back part of the flower, which if you've got a seed pod on it, you notice with a lot of flowers you get seeds afterwards, and it's the same with roses as well. You get this little piece at the back which is where the seeds are, and if you look at a real flower you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to get some small balls of paste, roll them into a ball. You don't want to be any bigger than a marifat pea for this size of rose. And if you want to get them all identical, like you say, you can always measure them on the yeah, about number 4 on that. Just check that, that's about the same size. So we want another one the same size as that. I mean, for an inexpensive tool, it's very handy. And the one thing about this tool is, as far as I'm aware, it's one of the tools that nobody's copied. That one's slightly, that's slightly smaller, is that? So I'm just going to add a little bit more paste into that one. Most of the other tools, I mean, Chinese have copied everything, and a lot of the manufacturers have had rings around trying to stop them from doing it. But I think they've all given up now because they don't seem to get anywhere with it. There we are. They're all the same size. So now what we need to do now is turn your flour upside down. Put some glue at the base of your wire, like that. Ball of paste on the bottom of your wire. Pull it down so it's underneath the calyx and just shape that round like that. Okay. Doesn't matter which way round you put your glue on, whether you put it on before you put your base on the wire, whichever is easier for you. Just make sure they're well in place as well, because some of the ones that I did before, the calyx, the hips had dropped off the back because I hadn't glued them on properly, so I had to mix up some glue with some flour paste in order to get them to stick. But we get there in the end. Right. I've got some glue on one of the calyx there, so I'm just going to get a bit of kitchen roll and just try and get that off, because when I come to dust it, if I don't, the dust won't take there. Get that off. That's it, it's better. Put those to one side to dry. Right, next stage is the exciting part. This is where we start colouring things, ready to put them together. Kitchen roll. It's a good idea if you get your board out of the way when you come to this point, for the simple reason that if you don't, you end up with a lot of colour on there, and you don't need your board for this. So I've got a piece of kitchen roll here. So what I'm going to do is, now you only use tiny amounts of colour for whatever you're doing. Now I'm going to use a few different colours here. I'm going to use rich burgundy. Where's the other one? Where's my blackcurrant? There it is. Blackcurrant, which I'm going to use on the roses, and I'm using ginkgo green for these. These are all edible art powder colours. These are just about the cheapest colour on the market and one of the biggest ranges of colours. So now then, leaves first of all, and this is where I find a lot of students fall down on making the leaves, because they get a bit carried away with this little bit on the end that I'm going to show you now. Right, for each set you want one large, two medium and two small. Now I have a range of brushes. I know a lot of students don't have different brushes for different jobs, but you can do that later on. You can always add to your range. This one's the oldest brush that I've got. This is 30 odd years old, is this brush, and I'm still using it. And I only use this for greens. Right, so the first colour I'm going to do is, I'm going to do some rich burgundy on the edge of the leaves. So if you look at some that I've already coloured there, you can see how I've got that sort of reddish tinge right on the edge of the leaves. It's probably a bit more than the actual flowers are, but sometimes when we're doing things in sugar, we sometimes have to over exaggerate things a bit to make them look realistic, if that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is tiny bit of colour on the brush. Now it's on your brush, off your brush, then go to the edge and you brush from the outside in like that. Some people